Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our monthly installment of RecTalks. RecTalks are informative and influential discussions with experts in their industries of sport, recreation, physical education, and wellness. And they were hosted by Duke Recreation and Physical Education. Our goal is to provide resources and information that promote physical, environmental, and mental well-being for our global community. I'd like to thank our series sponsor, Hydro Flask, for supporting these discussions. And at the end of this, if you registered, you will be sent a link and to ask, we're asking you to provide some feedback on our discussion, and then you'll be entered to win a prize from Hydro Flask. So make sure to do that at the end of this. My name is Leanne Garstecki, she, her, hers, and I am the Director of Fitness and Wellness for Duke Recreation and Physical Education. I'm really excited to facilitate this discussion with our amazing panelists that we have here tonight. And we're going to dive into the topic of health, nutrition, and recreation. So that being said, let's get started. Beth, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, hi, my name is Beth McCall. I am currently the Director of Sports Nutrition for the athletic department here at Duke, going on my 5th year working at Duke. Thanks for having me tonight.
Great, thanks for being here. Franca.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Franca Alfin. I'm the Director of Nutrition Services at Student Health and also an Associate Professor in Family Medicine and Community Health. I've been around for a while, but I love it. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with all of you.
Great, thanks for being here. Aaron.
Hello, everyone. It's Aaron Williams, he, him, his. I am the Saplings Coordinator over at Seeds for working with our middle school youth. Thank you for having me tonight.
Great, welcome. And Chris.
How's it going, everybody? Chris Policastro. I am the Director of Recreation Facilities at Duke Rec and PE, and I've been at Duke for about 2.5 years now. So I'm looking forward to our conversation here tonight with everybody.
Great. So as we said, our topic tonight, health, nutrition, and recreation. Nutrition is a really broad topic. And so we're not really going to be focusing on the details of nutrition necessarily, but more so looking at it through food, our relationship with food, understanding it, the impact of food, as well as the role that it has, that it plays in community. Our panelists, as you here have a array of backgrounds, and they have a lot of different experiences. So you're going to hear a lot of different takes on some of the set questions that we have. That being said, we do have some set questions. However, anybody in the audience is welcome to chime in. We have a Q&A. I think the chat is disabled, but we do have the Q&A up. So feel free to drop in a question, a comment, and I will be trying to pay attention to that throughout our conversation so that I can hopefully get some of your questions answered if we don't already answer them. So let's dive in. So we talked about it being a broad topic, but food and nutrition more specifically maybe can be a really hot topic. A lot of people like to have their opinions on that. However, you are experts tonight. So I'd like to know, how does food contribute to overall health and well-being in your eyes? Franca, let's start with you.
Well, how long do we have? No, just fundamentally, I mean, it contributes to growth, to health, development. We clearly need to eat in order to support all of those things happening. But I think, and I'm sure the others will delve into this on a larger perspective, it's so social, it connects us. We have areas called culinary arts, and we don't think of cooking necessarily as a humanities, but it speaks to how it brings people together, how we have common ground. We all have to eat. We learn from one another, cultural differences on how we prepare food. So it has tremendous significance beyond just the growth, development, and supporting that.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many pieces to this. We could take the whole hour to talk about it. Aaron, what's your take on that?
Hello. Yeah, so, just from the perspective of an educator, someone, dealing with our youth, and, we all are in different capacities. It affects, someone's ability to do well in school, and someone's ability to focus, if they haven't had food, or, what types of food that they have accessible. So it's definitely, food reflects and pretty much can contribute to the overall health of your community that you are a part of. And what you have access to and what's affordable also, plays into that. Because sometimes it's not necessarily about like, oh, well, like apples, but like what do you have available to you in your community that you can use to contribute to your overall health and well-being. And definitely adding to that part, it does bring people together and creates a community around what issues are going on, when we can sit to the table and have a common ground while we eat.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about community when we all met ahead of time. Beth, you work with a kind of specific community. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, so a very commonly used phrase that we use with athletes, and in its most simplest form, is we oftentimes think of food as fuel. We talk about food being the fuel for our bodies, just like gasoline is for the car. And to be a high competing athlete, you need to put the high grade fuel into your body. But then we also like to educate on food also being our fuel for life, especially in the population that I work with. They also have to be a student first and foremost. So it's fueling their brain for the classroom, and then carrying them out to the practice field. And then we also talk about how it's going to fuel them for the rest of their life. So I think that food as fuel is a great way for anybody to think about food and nutrition, whether you're an athlete or not.
Great. Yeah. And I think a lot of people I think we're bringing up topics that people don't necessarily first think about when we talk about food for health and well-being. When we're talking about growth, development, culture, that goes like a whole different direction that I think a lot of people aren't used to. Chris, where do you go with that?
Yeah, just kind of echoing what everybody else has said already. But one thing that has stuck out to me, and Beth kind of took the words out of my mouth, the fuel part. Being on the rec side, we see students coming in every day, and the impact of food on their concentration, their mood, is significantly impacted. And a lot of times when we see students who are struggling through their workouts or are just very tired, a lot of the times the conversation starts with, when was the last time you ate, or what have you eaten recently? And you could see, immediately when the answer is, yesterday night or 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, you can kind of see the impact that it's having, not only on performance, in the facility, but concentration when they start to study and mood. Speaking from personal experience, mood for me, food and mood go together. I pretty much plan my day around food, and I know when I'm going to eat and in my meals and things of that sort. And I know when I'm not paying attention, and if I miss something, mood is significantly impacted, thus energy and concentration and things along those lines.
Yeah.
Leanne, if I could just chime in here and pick up on what Chris said, not to be remiss in addressing mental health, in that, there's quite a bit of research now that actually supports diet and positive outcomes with mental health, depending on how we eat and what we choose to eat. And that speaks a little bit to Chris. I mean, mood, nobody wants to be around a hungry person, right? So, but not to people, we don't talk a lot about food and mental health because mental health is such a big topic, but the reality is poor diets don't help mental health. And so recognizing that we have to work with individuals to the best of their ability with what they have available, but to educate them on how their diet might actually help improve some of their mental health.
I have something to say about that as well. There's a cool book actually about that. It's called The Mind-Gut Connection. And it talks about, literally that our gut is a second brain. And, like the things that we're putting inside of our bodies are informing, our development, but also, the chemicals that are literally in our brains to, serotonin levels and oxytocin, all these things that, kind of, affect our mood and our personalities even. So that was really cool. And that came up from you guys talking about that. And yeah, just kind of reframing our relationship with food and thinking about, like mindful eating practices, like what are the flavors that we're putting into our bodies? Like how are these foods that we're consuming, adding value to our overall health, and just being, like you were saying before, educated on, how these particular herbs or, vegetables or fruits, add, value to us.
And I hate to, Aaron, you've gave me the perfect platform here. So I certainly had to say, you mentioned the word relationship. And, I try to tell everyone that I work with that everyone has their own relationship with food. Not any one of us have the same relationship with food. And so you can read a lot about nutrition, you can learn a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be able to implement those changes depending on how we use food and what we use food for and what our relationship with food is. So I think we have to be very sensitive to that when you're working with individuals or giving advice, that we don't know what their relationship is. And so we'd like to get to know them a little bit better to understand that so that we can help them more appropriately.
Yes, I think that's super important because it can sometimes, based on, talking about what people have available to them versus like, oh, what's the healthy foods, like sometimes someone might not have the same things available to them that someone else does in their community. So it is definitely sensitive in, understanding that, and that talks about food insecurity pretty much.
Yeah, and I think, you all are hitting on the complexity. When I was doing nutritional counseling in my career long ago, and even as a personal trainer, one of the questions we always get is, what should I eat? Kind of the same as what should I do for my workout, but what should I eat? And they don't understand how complex that question is, and that there's so many pieces to that you have to go through. So, kind of going on that notion of everything you've all have just mentioned, what do you say to people when they ask you that question? Because I'm sure most of you have gotten that question. Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, first and foremost, that's a loaded question for sure. And sometimes it's like, do we have time to talk about this right now? Because similar to you, Leanne, in my past, I've done a lot of personal training, so getting that question a lot. I think a lot of times it is, to Franca's point though, getting to know the person's relationship with food. So a lot of it is, let's food journal for a week and let me get a better understanding of kind of where you're at, what you are currently eating, the foods you like, and things like that, and start building off of that template. Because otherwise you may be making recommendations for foods that, whether they have access to it or it's too expensive, or if they have an allergy or something like that, that's not going to be helpful at all. So I think it's getting to know the person a little bit better. And like I said, whether it's a food journal and having conversations about what they do have access to, the foods they like. And like I said, kind of building off of that.
Yeah. And to further take that, it's a lot about them getting to know themselves with food, because, I go back to the journaling, and we're taught that early on in our career to like have people journal. But all they do is write down, sometimes it's what they ate, maybe when they ate it, or how much. I like to go deeper. How did you feel? Who are you with? What are you doing before and after? And learning those patterns and relationships again, Franca, with food. It's more than just taking hey, this is how much I ate and what I ate. As we all know, people react to foods differently. Everyone's needs are different. Beth, I kind of think about athletes with this, and I go back to my time as a sports nutritionist, and having athletes who need to gain weight. Some of them you're pushing the food just because of the sport they play, but they're all maybe doing some of the same workouts, but yet they're very different on their needs, and how difficult it is to walk through training table and be like, yes, 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 and then tell somebody else, no, no, no. And it's very complicated. So how about you when they ask, what should I eat?
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. As I'm thinking about this question, I just already have multiple different athletes that I saw just in this week so far that the questions had to be tailored a little bit different. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the relationships piece, again, I think not only us working in this field is it important to learn other people's relationships with food, but just simply forming a strong relationship with who we're working with first and foremost to build their trust. So then they feel comfortable sharing a lot of these details with you is important to kind of get further down that road. But then, yeah, with athletes, and to answer the loaded question of what should I eat, we need to also learn, like, okay, obviously we will most likely know what sport they are, just because being a smaller setting, but learning their sport, learning the period of training that they're in. Is it the off season? Is it in season? Are you trying to gain weight, lose weight, maintain weight? All sorts of different complexities. We need to know their class schedule. We need to know where they're getting their meals from in order to help them build the answer to that question of what should they eat. And then it also varies day to day throughout the week. Is this a hard training day? Is it an easy training day? Is it an off day? So there's a lot that goes into it. And I think their eyes just get open once you start asking them all of these questions that they don't think are even related.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like what you said about like journaling and going deeper about like, okay, how do these foods particularly make you feel when you ate them? Because that's what we try to focus on and center our activities around, and lessons, and just engagement at Seeds with social emotional learning, and just centering food and taking that as like putting it into everything that we do. So, when we are journaling, it's like, we're journaling to figure out how we felt, when we ate this food, or what flavors came up: salty, sweet, bitter, spicy, like, and just like food is just so much deeper than just, us putting something in our bodies. Like, it's heritage, it's culture, it's art, it's a way to explore ourselves and be creative. So I think just like almost seeing food as being sacred, and kind of going back to those types of practices that are rooted in, indigenous practices as well, is just like, that's a chance for us to really tap into, seeing food as a catalyst to build community, as well as, all the things that we're trying to do to make sure that we stay alive and well.
Yeah. Franca, you kind of obviously have a different population than the athletes. You're looking at students, and kind of what Aaron was just talking about, that social and emotional learning, and how do you handle students? And a lot of times, if students have issues with food, right? They don't have necessarily maybe the healthiest relationship with food. How do you handle that question?
Well, I've been listening. I'm taking notes here as everybody's talking. So, the word "should" is already a little bit sort of gets my back up, because I don't know your body. I don't know. So my question often is, what are your goals? Before I can even begin to address that, what do you ultimately, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And so that gives me a little bit of an idea of where we might be able to start. As you know, Leanne, and Beth probably too, I'm a big fan of journaling. And what I did want to point out, especially as you said, usually when I ask people to journal, it is based on it. We're not counting anything. There's no macros, there's no grams, there's no numbers. Basically, it's what are you eating? And then the bigger piece is, what are you doing while you're eating? What are you thinking about? How are those thoughts making you feel? And so what's interesting, Aaron, is I've worked with younger kids in the past, and there the feelings are more simplistic: tired, energy, excited, really good. So, and as we grow and get a little bit more involved in this, you can push people to get a little bit deeper as far as their emotions. Do they feel sad, overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, angry, mad? So they can be a little bit more specific, which then gives them insight into how they might be using food to actually help them feel differently. So the journaling is really, really insightful. And I want to point out, journaling is not judgment. When we ask you to journal, the biggest ask we have, which is the biggest challenge, is not to judge what you're writing down. We typically want to judge: I'm eating the wrong thing, I'm eating too much, oh my God, I can't believe I ate all of that, or oh my God, my food is so bad. That's not helping us. And so the idea is really just to journal and be curious and approach it with curiosity and see what you can learn. And then we'll come back together and we'll review sort of what insights you might have gotten. And I will say, I am not anti-apps by any means, but using MyFitnessPal is not the same as journaling. When you use many of these apps, you're counting numbers. Eating becomes a numeric exercise. And eating is not number-based. We don't eat numbers, we eat food. And so there are times where an app like that might be appropriate, but the majority of times we really want to move away from that. We want to reestablish a relationship with the food we eat, not with the numbers that we're counting.
I love that. That's a great point. I know you and I share a lot of those feelings. Something was mentioned earlier, and Erin, I think you hit on this a couple times, but more about maybe the food insecurity piece, and when people talk about, what should I eat? And I think we've talked about like, well, what do you have access to? And that's a lot of people don't think about that unless they have to, right? You're not thinking about food insecurities for other people if you have all of this access to it. But it's more than just financial. I think some people equate it to just financial. It's location. Just here in Durham, we have, so many different grocery stores, but where are they located, and what kind of grocery store do you have near you? And sometimes there's differences between the same grocery stores offering different quality, depending on where they're located. And so I don't know, does anybody want to talk a little bit on that food insecurity piece and just conversations to have with people, or how to ask that without, I don't know that it would ever come off insensitive, but how do we talk about that?
Well, I can certainly, a couple of things you bring up. One, your zip code can determine what you have available to you. So people don't realize that. Durham is a large area, but depending on what your zip code is, what grocery stores or what you have available can be very different from another area. And yes, it is a sensitive subject, and it's most often people aren't going to offer that information unless you have, as Beth said, established like a really good relationship with somebody and they're comfortable with you and they're willing to share some of that, because often it brings quite a bit of shame, especially if other students they're with or other people don't experience those same things. So I think just being respectfully curious and maybe asking, do they grocery shop? If they grocery shop, where do they get their groceries? If you have some idea of how Durham is laid out, or certainly where you live, that might already give you an indicator of what types of things might be available to them. But the worst thing we can do is assume, and we get very used to working with, I do at least, with a certain population. That doesn't mean that everybody that goes to Duke falls in that same population. And so we can't assume just because you're at the same institution that everyone knows the same things. And I think the greatest problem we have is just not asking and assuming that it applies to everyone. And I think Beth alluded to this earlier too. Each person is an individual. There's certain things we can do sort of an umbrella, approach. But when it comes to nutrition, you have to really approach every single person differently, depending on what they do, what they're made of, how old they are, lots of factors. But we can't just do a generic approach to everyone, because everyone really has different needs.
I can definitely build on that with the piece of, you can't just assume, especially with the population that I work with a lot from the outside view. It's easy to think that, athletes, they have it all. But that's oftentimes not the case. Especially we have kids coming from various different levels of backgrounds, as well as different levels of scholarships, and scholarships aren't always covering everything. So it's easy to just assume maybe that they're all well and taken care of and have everything that they need, but that's not always the case. So then we have to troubleshoot and also build that trust with them so they can confide in us and we can help them find the avenues to get them what they do need. And I will say that's a lot of what we're experiencing with the pandemic restrictions is causing some more troubles of food access and ability to get all of the amount of food that you need, the proper fuel for their sport and for maybe the location that they're in. So there's a lot of different factors that you do want to dig a little bit deeper. And I love the way that Franca put it, of you can't just assume for everybody's situation to be the same.
Yeah. And, Chris, I'm wondering if you can add a little bit to that. When we talk about athletes, and Chris is a power lifter and he's worked with power lifters, and you have to eat a certain way and you have to eat a certain amount of food. And have you ever come across that where you've kind of had to alter something for someone due to food insecurity?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, we keep throwing the word, relationships around. And I think a lot of it too is building trust. So the more you can build trust people will start to open up and have those types of conversations. And I think with, especially in competitions that I've done, powerlifting, it's kind of a niche population, but it's very close knit, and people definitely look out for each other, and that's something that has always kept me involved. But I do think a lot of it, like sharing meals together, and something that is not only you can view it as post workout and it's friendship, without the pressure of maybe feeling like you're digging too much or you're not sure about their food securities. So sharing meals and things like that, I think is very important. And like I said, as you build trust and invite people over, I know pandemic's been tough for that type of thing. But really, like I said, just kind of building trust with people and inviting them to meals and things of that sort.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about the having food together and inviting people. But before we kind of tackle that, one more topic or in relation to the food insecurity, Franca, this would be to you, is, college students, if you live on campus, you're on a meal plan. We may have folks from around the country at different universities listening to this. And I know every university kind of has a different setup, but, recently there was an article put out and some students were talking about the meal plans and in the issues that can come up with that of, we overhear it. We hear it in our building. Oh, I'm out of food points or meals, or, oh, I have too many left. Hey, can you spot me? Can you swipe me in? How does that, impact the students? But is there a good solution to that? That's one of my questions is there can't be a perfect, but a more ideal system and structure for universities to use? And also, if we overhear students and they're talking about, hey, I'm out of food points or meal plans, how should we go about that in helping them?
So, Aaron, I don't know if you're familiar with Duke Reach. Anybody at Duke is familiar with Duke Reach. It's basically a larger case management department. They will work with students that have many different challenges. Food insecurity is one of them. So if you are overhearing that a student is having a hard time getting food, you can refer them to Duke Reach, and basically they will connect with them and make sure that they have the available resources that they need. We do have some eateries on campus that basically donate points or make sure that the student has food available. The other question you have as far as meal plans, I think that's an age-old, for the 30 plus years I've been here, I think that's an age-old question. It serves a purpose for the university. It does serve a purpose to some degree for students, meal plans, because it makes it easier. They're not having to grocery shop. Some of them want to. And by the way, if you're living off campus, you don't have to be on a meal plan. So it's usually just the first 3 years that students would be required, and they can sign up for varying meal plans. But what happens is they see the price of the meal plans and they feel like it's inordinately expensive, and they want to save money on food, which they then end up using for other things. But then they run out of money on their meal plan because nobody has really worked with them on one kind of meal plan they really need to sign up for. A lot of times parents will want them to sign up for the most, and then some students will have money left over, but it does roll over to the next semester. It's not until the end of the year that if they have leftover, that they try to spend it in very creative ways so it doesn't go back to the university. But I think part of it is educating students on the importance of signing up for an appropriate meal plan and not looking at this as, I want to save as much money as possible, so I'll sign up for the smallest meal plan and then I'll do cooking on my own. I'll go and buy groceries. Well, if you're living in a dorm, you have large kitchens that are shared by other students, and that sounds good, but it's probably not really practical. And although there are refrigerators, there's a limit to how much you can really store in there. So I think just having the discussion that it's not a waste of money to maybe spend a little bit more on a meal plan that seems to be excessive. But then again, at the end of the year, if you have some left over, then the next semester you can opt for possibly a smaller meal plan. So we can work with you on changing that. But often what I see is students want to save money. So for example, it's costing their family a lot of money to send their child to Duke, or even if they're on scholarship. And so they're trying to save money for their family. And a lot of times they want to do that by cutting back on the meal plan. And that doesn't always work well in the long run, because then those are often the students that run out of points, which is cash basically. And so it happens usually around finals, so come finals, they're now dependent on free food. And there is a website that you can go to, and I think it's Free Food at Duke or Duke Free Food. And it actually lists every day where events are happening that you can have access to food. Now that's probably not happening because of COVID, but when we were all on campus. And so students could sort of find their way sometimes, like, where can I go that I can get some free food? But unfortunately, the timing of it is usually that come end of the semester is when they run out of points. And that's when they really need it come finals, because obviously they need their fuel for their brain and things like that. So we do have resources. There's really no need for any student ever to be without food. The problem is oftentimes students will not express the need. So it's really getting a student to be comfortable enough to ask for help.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation, I will say. Okay. And those free food events, I didn't go to Duke, I actually went to Chapel Hill. But those free food events, blessing, let me tell you. But yeah, there has definitely, that's something that is hard to navigate sometimes. But at UNC, at least when I was there, and the people that went there that year, it was like a culture of like, okay, when people had extra swipes, like they would just be like, hey, I got swipes, and they would just swipe everybody, well, however many they had that day to get rid of them. But yeah, so that's obviously not sustainable, but maybe like a database with like whoever has extra swipes and who wants to sign up to give their swipes away, or a list, something like that maybe can be something more useful and sustainable that can go around the people that may need a swipe or two just to make it by. But yeah, the meal plans, and just harking on everything you said, I agree with everything, and those resources are really useful, but it's just those meal plans can be steep yet sometimes, just looking at the perspective of a student that also had to deal with being like, okay, I'm gonna cook at the dorm, or should I just go to the meal hall and get some swipes or something like that? But yeah, definitely something to think about.
That's a great idea, the database of trying to get students to connect if you have extra swipes. And I did not know about the free food. Like, I'm sure the students use that. That's a great thing to have. And so hopefully we can put these resources. I think I see them.
They're all in the, yes, they're all in there. And just so you know, we are rolling out something exciting come April. I'm just not at Liberty, but we're doing a lot of work around food insecurity. So I think it'll be really exciting. It'll offer a lot of students options that are very discreet. So students won't necessarily have to speak up, but they'll be able to access ways to get more food. So
awesome. We will be on the lookout for that and hopefully share that. That's exciting.
Awesome.
So one thing that we've talked about kind of from the beginning, and I know it's about relationship with food, but we've talked about community and relationships. And so, when it comes to food, a lot of socialization revolves around that, and that builds community. People go out to eat, whether it's just for fun or for work meetings. Hey, let's go grab a coffee. Let's do that. And then COVID hit, and that had to stop. And we all know, we've probably all seen the news stories that there's a huge spike in feelings of loneliness, right? And mental health issues during this time, and people are cut off from others. So given that, how do we, in this time, how do we use food to support our social well-being given what's going on?
I'll jump in real quick on that from personal experience. FaceTime. So we've done this a lot. I got two young girls, and they miss their grandparents a lot, and both sets of grandparents live out of state. So whether it's during lunchtime or dinner time, we will set up the iPad and FaceTime and eat while grandparents eat. So it feels like you're eating together, right? And that's really, it's kind of funny because it was really organic the way we started doing that. It wasn't like, oh, we need to do this because of the pandemic. It was just a lot of it stemmed from the fact that they don't live nearby. But obviously, like I said, then you throw the pandemic in it, and then it became even more important. So that's something, just like I said, from a personal side of things, being able to do that and share a meal over FaceTime is pretty cool.
Yeah, I would say at Seeds we do a couple things. That FaceTime is definitely one. Zoom, it has never been better right now to just be able to connect, virtually. And a part of my curriculum at Seeds that I've been developing with the virtual program, and on Tuesdays we have Tasty Tuesdays, and it's a time where students can get together with their families and we pick a recipe either from their heritage or just a recipe that we're going to talk about, the health, and just maybe highlight an herb or something that we're going to put in it, and we just make food together and just hang out and just cook. It's just a time set aside to enjoy food together, and a time where the parents can take a break and just make a meal or some lunch with their student. And then so every last Saturday of the month, we're going to start back our community meals where, obviously, like trying to be as safe as possible and have like non-contact events. But we do a big community meal where we try to serve 100 and 150 servings, to locals in the community around Northeast Durham, to just come and grab a hot meal, at Seeds that we whip up with. Before it was with the help of our students, but during COVID, we limited the amount of people, kind of helping out with that. But we still trying to push out that, food to our community in this time where everybody needs like a hot meal,
Yeah, that's great.
For athletics, one of our favorite team bonding activities and educational activities that we would offer across multi-sports, as well as cooking classes, that we would do about 3 times a semester for all of the sports. Anyone could sign up, and then sport by sport, we do it kind of as a team bonding piece. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that since we've been back, but during the quarantine, while all of them were at home, we were able to connect with a few of the teams that are interested and do a Zoom cooking demo, and it just turned out great. We had probably about 5 different teams opt in, and we sent the recipe or the ingredients list to the athletes that wanted to join. And we had some even they couldn't go get all the ingredients, but they still hopped on just to hang out with their teammates. And it turned out really awesome. And now we're planning to try and do it with teams that have apartments and they can safely be in small groups, and put together almost like a Blue Apron basket for them to then pick up, or we'll distribute at practice, and then they can take the basket back and we'll hop on Zoom and they'll be in their small groups in the apartments. So I agree with you, Aaron. Zoom has definitely been awesome for this, and we've still been able to have a lot of fun with it in a safe way.
And to say something about Zoom, I realized this kind of early on in the pandemic. I think, we talk about the Zoom fatigue and the virtual fatigue, but there is a huge difference, at least for me, on Zooming for personal fun things versus for work things, I remember even just, it was actually a work thing, but a staff meeting. And I was like, I'm so excited to see my staff who I haven't seen in months, but it's a big difference. And I think we need to tell people, don't get turned off by the fact that it's a Zoom activity. It's a whole different vibe on that. So yeah, definitely. Franca, how about you? How do you see food kind of contributing to our social well-being?
The same. We have a cooking demo coming next week that we're doing with Carolina. So basically, someone from UNC is going to be cooking, and what we're doing is it's basically on a budget, but it's how to use Southern foods that fit into the Mediterranean style of eating, because that's what everybody's always talking about. So how do you take the foods that we have available and fit into that? And so that will be on Thursday night. And we only do this once or twice a year, but it's fun to get the 2 schools together and actually work together. And we also certainly offer via Zoom if people want to do that. We typically, on our website, if you go to Duke Student Health under Nutrition Services, there's a link called Cook's Corner, and there we have little 2-minute videos. So somebody can watch very quickly on how to do overnight oats or some really quick recipes. And so you don't have to spend a long time. It's very basic ingredients. So we like to sort of have it in that format. And so they can watch somebody when they want to watch them, and they don't necessarily have to sign up at a certain time. But I agree that I think Zoom has really presented a great opportunity to get people to attend these events, and they don't have to go anywhere. They can do it from their home rather than actually have to go somewhere to watch a cooking demo. You know, the drawback is you're eating your own food, not what somebody else prepared for you. So sometimes that might work, sometimes not so much, but it's a great way to certainly do that. Yeah, absolutely.
And we all developing cooking skills around this time, it's all good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to, jump in on that and just, say like, just around this time in terms of our social well-being, food is, and I've said before, heritage, culture, it's a way to connect to our identity. So, especially during this time where we're all stuck inside and we're, some of us are away from our families. My family is in Miami, so it's, 800 miles away. So it's like a way to just reconnect, in a way when you're so physically distant even. In a way to remember our ancestors, in a way to nourish ourselves through that process. So, food and cooking is a spiritual process. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it definitely is. So a lot of this has people coming together to, whether they cook or eating together, and obviously it's virtual. We know some people are still eating together, not virtually, whether that's a social distance picnic. I know I've done that, a little bit as well. And so, in talking about where we get our food from and how we get and consume our food, I kind of want to explore our environment that we're in when we're consuming our food. And so in a couple different ways. First, I'm hoping somebody could kind of hit on the difference between eating locally and eating organically, because that there's emphasis on the actual environment when we talk about that. But I also want to explore the actual environment of the people you're with and surrounded by. And it kind of goes back to that being sensitive and understanding that everyone has a different relationship with food. So yeah, can someone kind of hit on, first of all, the local versus organic and the difference and role that plays?
Well, organic usually defines the soil in which food is grown. It usually means it's been untreated with pesticides and chemicals, and typically you're just naturally letting it lay fallow for, half a year, 6 months, or a year, and then you're using the soil, but it's pretty much untreated. And organic does have a set definition. So if something is labeled organic, it has to comply with that definition. Sometimes we think, and I don't want to use certain foods, but there's certain stores that people go into and assume that everything in that store is organic because they are known for some of their organic foods. Unless it's labeled organic, it's not going to be organic. Local is very different. Local deals with the carbon footprint. So one, we want to support our local farmers. So we really make sure their business thrives. But two, if we're looking at carbon footprint and how do we help our ozone basically in our environment, we want to try to buy food that's closer to where we need it, rather than fly something in from California, which is going to have a huge carbon footprint. And so locally grown really serves many purposes. You're supporting your own, supporting local businesses. Oftentimes what you're getting is literally, if you're looking at meat, it is slaughtered that day and slaughtered humanely, and you're getting it in a very short period of time. So it's very fresh. Carbon footprint is minimized. So the two things can be very, very different. Both are important. I will say this, I'd rather you eat a variety of fruits and vegetables than worry about whether or not it's organic. Organic can be very expensive. You can eat healthy things that are not organic. So cost is certainly a factor when it comes to that. Yeah. And then,
I think,
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to add to that as well. Their organic food farmers have grown exponentially, over these recent years. So to Franca's point, food miles is like a real thing. So you look at how far organic food is traveling, trucks or planes, things can happen. So when you look at, local foods, to the contrary, it's obviously, like you said, pick today and you pick it up that afternoon, and big difference there. So obviously too, I would assume most local, farmers also have pretty strict standards. It may not be organic, but I'm sure that's very close. So, and then obviously just giving back to your community from an economy standpoint. There's, again, use an example for me. There's a little strawberry farm patch down the street, and I love bringing my girls to that in the springtime. That strawberries will be ready here pretty soon, April, May time. So we'll go over there, and in the fall they got pumpkins and things like that. So I think, in addition to just, the local, supporting local farmers, you can really make a family outing out of those types of things and experiences and things like that too. So you get to talk to the farmer, and you get to talk to how they grow things, and make it educational and fun. So there's a lot of benefit on that side of things too.
Chris, you're funny. You said strawberries will be ready soon. What do you mean? I can get strawberries any time of year. They can fly them in from somewhere else. We forget about seasonality. I mean, the other thing is, if you really want to help the environment, eat those foods only when they're in season. That also helps the carbon footprint, because they're not transporting all that food from, the West Coast. And that word almost doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I grew up with, you ate strawberries in the spring when it was season, and then when blueberries were in season, and now we can go to the grocery store and get it pretty much 24/7, every day, but they don't taste the same. They really don't. And that's the other piece. Yep. When you take your girls strawberry picking, you can really taste strawberries. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, is that something you guys talk about a lot, the seasonality?
Yeah, definitely plant seasonality, and just knowing, the difference between hot crops and cold crops and cool season crops, so, what should you plant, when the last frost is. There's different factors that, go into growing the things that we, love to eat, the foods that we love to eat. So, that what you guys are talking about, eating local versus organic, it goes into, us being participants and supporting our local food system, and just making sure that we can sustain the local food system and the farmers that are doing the work to grow the foods that we, want to eat seasonally. And I think that the two can go together. A lot of times, I think Chris talked about this a little bit, saying that, the local farmers that are around have strict standards. Not all of them necessarily have go through this particular certification, but some do. And if organic is just something that you just want to make sure that you're eating, the GAP certification, it's called Good Agricultural Practices, and it's a certification that local farmers have to get, or some of them want to get to be certified organic and stuff. So you can maybe do some research and just look up different local farms and farmers that have these practices. If eating organic is just something that you feel like you have to do, you can just make sure that the local farms around you have the GAP certification. That's another way to do it. But definitely just supporting the farmers around us and participating in our local food system rather than the big conglomerates is important when we talk about food sustainability, food justice, and supporting Black and brown farmers as well as a part of that.
That's great. You guys all hit on all the points I wanted to. And because I think a lot of people think just organic, they've gotten in that mindset, and really going back to thinking locally is really important to do. And on your note there, Aaron, the Black Farmers Market this past summer, I remember I tried to go in a couple times, and the line was around the block. They're getting so much support, and that is amazing. If you are in the area, follow them on Instagram, Black Farmers Market. It's great. We're getting down to the last, 8 minutes here. And just a reminder, anybody in the audience, if you have questions, comments, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. Even if we can't get to it, we may be able to follow up after. Given the time, I kind of want to give a couple takeaways here. And so to kind of go back to our topic, the topic is health, nutrition, and recreation. And oftentimes people think recreation is physical activity. And I like to remind people that it's not just about physical activity. And I was looking up the actual definition, and it's a couple different ones, but activity done for enjoyment when one is not working by Oxford, or refreshment of strength and spirits after work by Merriam-Webster. And so, we've talked about cooking a lot. For me, that's recreation. That's something fun, right? So with everything, and we kind of hit on this before, but maybe there's a couple fun things that you can give tips for or examples to do for people on their own or with friends. We've talked a lot about what they do through, Duke or through an organization and with their teams. But, what are some ways that we can keep these community connections going, but kind of as it relates to recreation? Any final takeaway tips or ideas?
I would say a couple things. I'm sorry if I keep speaking first or something, but
you're fine.
yeah. So pretty much, one, I love getting outside and being able to garden and just be in that space of getting a chance to grow something and listen to music while you're out there. Like, make it fun. It doesn't have to be like, oh, this is so hard. But so get outside, turn on some music, like make an event out of being in a space outside with people, whether it's just enjoying a garden space or being out there doing some work, growing some food. I would also say try to get involved in, and do some research on local organizations that are, doing the work in the communities with community gardens and feeding people, especially during this time where, there's a lot of need for money, to be donated to these organizations. There's a lot of people that, they need volunteers to possibly cook. I know Feed Durham is doing a lot of work right now with feeding a lot of people, I think every month, Food Not Bombs, Seeds. We have a food distribution program and, we're doing community meals and stuff like that. CIP, Communities in Partnership, is also another organization that is doing this like local grassroots work. So yeah, just have fun with it and get out there and try to participate in the community in the spirit of growing and cooking food together, and you meet a lot of cool people.
That's good. And Aaron, will you put a couple of those in the chat to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Well, I'll tack on to that because Aaron said the main word. Why don't we try just doing something for fun that isn't about calorie burning or purpose, or just have fun? Like I ask students all the time, so what do you do for fun? And I usually get a blank stare, like fun. I'm in the middle of midterms, or, I get school is hard, but we can still have fun. Or when was the last time you laughed? I mean, a really hearty laugh, that just find something that makes you laugh or something that really brings you joy. It doesn't have to be all day, but at least a little bit every day. That would be really great.
I love that.
I'll just throw in a shameless plug. So, one thing that we harp on with Duke Rec and PE is that we're a recreation center and not just a gym. And we take a very holistic, approach to well-being. So we have aquatics programming and fitness programming and all types of other fun stuff. So I think, tapping into that mind, body, spirit is something that we really focus on. So shameless plug there.
Well, it's my dream to have a kitchen in a rec center.
There you go.
When people go visit other rec centers and they have kitchens, I usually get pictures. Leanne's going to be jealous, and I am. Beth, how about you?
I would say just kind of then bringing it back to food, have fun with food and don't be afraid to try something new. Like sometimes with athletes, we'll set a goal of like each week, I want you to try a new food. And I think we all can do that. Sometimes you kind of get stuck in your rut. And I will say that during the pandemic was a time that I started to try new things and just kind of exploring in the kitchen, especially if you're just cooking for yourself or for your family. If it doesn't turn out, oh, well, you learn, but you might hit like the best recipe ever. I remember Aaron in our pre-talk call saying he landed one of his favorite recipes by just trying something out. So I think there can be a lot of fun in that, especially if you do enjoy cooking.
Yeah. And I love that. I think we talked in our pre-talk about, hey, introduce a new food to somebody, have a friend group and have a little challenge like, hey, I'm going to pick this food out. What haven't you guys tried? And just go with it. I think that kind of in summary, we're all saying just have fun with it and don't take it so seriously. Mm-hmm. Don't be so serious about your food. Just enjoy it and use it for what it's there for. Right.
Yeah. Redefining our relationship to food and each other. And using that as a basis to also reshape the way we walk through the world and navigate and reimagine the communities that we want to be a part of.
Yep.
And hopefully we can have some summer barbecues this summer.
Yeah. Yes. Fingers crossed.
we making the outdoor classroom space, kitchen equipped. So, that's the mission. So we can cook outside, we can play music, we want to have like games, obviously, like, not a lot of people with COVID, but, people that we do have, as we develop and more people get the vaccines and stuff, we can do more things. Let's have fun.
Well, we'll come to you. You can host us for the fun. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope our guests and our participants got a lot out of this. So thank you, and have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.